This is Sarah with Posh Pooch Designs, and today's video I'm going to show you how to make a fun and little 6-inch Frisbee Flyer. These are so much fun to play with, and they're so much fun to make. These are great for playing outside or inside with your dogs and even with your kids. With my granddaughter, we like to set up a basket or maybe some hula hoops and throw these babies and try to get them in those circles. You can get them soaking wet and throw them at people. And they're also fun for the dogs to chase. And in this little pocket, sometimes I'll hide a dog treat and toss it, and then the dogs go and find them and get the dog treat out. Then they bring it back to me because they want another dog treat. Now these are about 6 inches across, depending on how tightly that you stitch. And they're made out of worsted weight number 4 yarn. You can use cotton if you like. I just found that the worsted weight number 4 seems to hold up just a little bit better. And these colors are all Red Heart Super Saver colors. This is the Panther Pink. I used 1 strand of that and 1 strand of black. And I used yellow and brown on this one. And this is 2 strands of the Fiesta. We are going to be stitching with 2 strands of worsted weight yarn. And for today's demonstration, I'm going to use these 2. And I'll show you how to do it with 2 strands. And we're still going to be using an H hook. This is an H 5mm because we want them to be nice and tightly stitched. You will need 1 stitch marker or something to mark your rounds because we're going to be working in continuous rounds and we won't be joining. You'll also need a needle for weaving in your ends and a pair of scissors. Now this is a free pattern on my blog. It's just called the Frisbee Dog Toy. I call them Frisbee Flyers or Frisbee Dog Toys because dogs and people alike love to play with them. They're super fun, and if they get dirty, just toss them in the wash machine with your towels. They can even go through the dryer. So just gather you up some of your leftover worsted weight number 4 yarns that you don't know what to do with, and we'll make some Frisbee Flyers. But we're going to be working with 2 strands of worsted weight, holding them together. And we are using our H hook, and that's because I want you to pull them tightly so that the Frisbee Flyers are nice and tight. So let's make our slip knot. And then we're going to chain 10. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so there's our 10 chains. And now we're going to take the tail and wrap it over our hook and pull it through that last loop. And we'll just snug that down to where the chain closes. And I'll make another knot just to hold it in place like that. All right, so there's our circle. I'm going to hold this way because we're going to be stitching over, and that'll help us hold down those strings, so it'll be one less thing we have to tie off later. All right, so we're going to take our hook and go right in that circle we just made and stitch a single crochet. And then we're going to stitch 19 more for a total of 20 single crochets all the way around this chain circle that we made. So there's 1. We go through, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. That's how we make a single crochet, going through the loop. And this is going to be a tight fit to get all 20 of them on there. So we're going to do a few like that. Then we're just going to squish those down a little bit because we've got to get all 20 of them on this circle. All right, see, I've got quite a few on there. I'm going to squish them over, push them down, and I'm going to count, see how many I've made so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got to get 10 more on there. So I'll just squish those down some more. There's 11, 12, 13, 14, and here's 15. Go ahead and squish those over some more because I got to get 5 more stitches in there. All right, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So there's my 20 stitches. Now we're not going to join, we're going to work in continuous rounds. And so what we'll do at this point is we'll take our stitch marker and we'll mark this first single crochet because that's our first stitch. Okay, I'm going to set that down for now because we're going to stitch in that first stitch and then we'll put our marker in. All right, for row 2, we're going to place 1 single crochet in the first stitch and 2 single crochets in the second, and then we'll repeat that all the way around. So I'm going to put my first single crochet in, and then I'm going to use my stitch marker and mark that because that's the first single crochet of my second row. So then in the next stitch I'm going to place 2 single crochets. There's 1, there we go, and 2. Looks like I lost my loop, and that happens sometimes when you're working with 2 strands and pulling tightly like we are. All right, so now there's 1 single crochet in the first stitch and 2 single crochets in the second. And we're going to repeat this. 1 single crochet in the next, 2 single crochets in the next. And we'll repeat this all the way around. And this will give us 30 single crochets for row 2. 1, 2. And there's my strings. We'll have to weave those in. I'm going to move them under so they're not in the way. Let's see, there's the next one. 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets all the way around. And when you're working with 2 strands, just make sure you hold them together and keep your tension because they can get separated, they can get loopy, and sometimes it's hard to grab them both with your hook. So you're just going to have to really watch that close, but it's really not difficult. Okay, so we're going to continue to stitch 1 single crochet in the next stitch and 2 single crochets in the next, 1 and 2 all the way around. And remember, we're not going to join, we're working in continuous rounds. And so we'll continue to do that all the way around. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my needle and work these 2 ends in so they're not in our way. So that's the second row of our Frisbee Flyer. All right, now remember, we don't join, and so I'm going to take out my stitch marker, set it down for just a second, and then we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in the next 3 single crochets, and this is the beginning of our third row. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch my first single crochet, and then I'm going to put my stitch marker back in. There we go, and then I'll stitch 2 more single crochets. Because the way row 3 works is we're going to stitch 3, 1, 2, 3 single crochets and then 2 single crochets in the next. So we're doing 3 and 2. So 1, 2, 3 single crochets and then 2 single crochets in the next. And we'll do this all the way around for row 3 till we reach back around to where our stitch marker is. Now at the end of row 3, you're going to have 2 extra single crochets at the end. So make sure you stitch those last 2 single crochets. So we're going to stitch 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 single crochets in the next, all the way around our row for row 3. So there's row 3. Here's our stitch marker. For row 4, we're going to stitch 5 single crochets, and then we'll stitch the next 2 single crochets together. So I'm going to take out my stitch marker again. I'm going to stitch my first single crochet. I'm going to place my stitch marker right back in, and then I'll stitch 4 more single crochets, 2, 3, and 4, and one more is 5. 5 single crochets, and then 2 single crochets together, 1 and 2, and that's the way row 4 will be. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets, and 2 single crochets together. Now you may have a little bit of curling that kind of pulls in a little. Just stretch it out a little. It's nice and tight and firm so that it will fly nice. Alright, so don't let that panic you. So for row 4, we're doing 5 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together, and repeating that all the way around. At the end of this row, or round, because we're stitching in the round, you're going to have 3 single crochets at the end. Make sure you put 1 single crochet in each of those last 3 in order for our total to work out. And you should have a total of, let me look on my list here, 43 stitches for row 4. Alright, so 5 single crochets and then 2 single crochets together. There's the 5 and then 2 together, all the way around to our stitch marker. There's row 4, and now we're ready for row or round. We're stitching in the round, so these are actually rounds, not rows. Round 5. So again, I'm going to remove my stitch marker. I'm going to stitch my first single crochet, and then I'm going to put my stitch marker back in. Now for row 5, we're going to be stitching 7 single crochets and then 2 together. So it's similar to the row before, only we're stitching 7 instead of 5. So there was my first one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there's my 7 single crochets. And now I'm going to stitch the next 2 together. So we're doing it similar to row 4, only we're doing 7 single crochets in between our 2 together. And this is our last increase row. After this row, we'll do a solid row of single crochets, and then we'll start decreasing. Alright, let me make sure. Here's my 2 together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 2 together. 1 and 2. And so we'll do this all the way around for row 5. 7 individual or single crochets, and then 2 single crochets together, 7 and 2, all the way back around to our stitch marker. I've almost got row 5 finished. I just wanted to show you at the end you're going to have 3 single crochets that you're going to need to do individually at the end of row 5 or round 5. I keep saying row, it's actually round. All right, so there's those last 3 single crochets to keep our counts right. Now, for row 6, we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets around. So, take my stitch marker out, stitch my first single crochet, and put my stitch marker right back in. The stitch marker is really important when you're stitching in the round in continuous rows to help you know where you started and stopped your row. That's why that stitch marker is important. All right, so now for row 6, we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. And then after this row, we're going to begin a decrease row. But don't panic. I will show you how to do it. It's really easy, not hard at all. So, let's continue on with row 6, 1 single crochet in each single crochet around, right back up to our stitch marker. So we stitched 1 single crochet in each single crochet around, and you should notice that it's kind of curling in just a little, and that's exactly what we want it to do. All right, so now for row 7, we're going to do kind of backwards from what we did up here. Let's take our stitch marker out, and we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in the next 7 single crochets, and then we'll do a decrease, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and do our first single crochet, put our stitch marker back in to count our rows, our rounds. I keep saying rows. All right, so let's stitch 7 single crochets. So we did the first one and then 2 more, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so there's our first 7, and then we're going to do a decrease or stitching 2 single crochets together. And the way we do that is we go in the first single crochet and pull up a loop. Then we go to the next single crochet and pull up another loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook instead of the normal 2 for a single crochet. We'll yarn over and go through all 3 of those sets of loops. And what that does is that decreases 2 single crochets to 1. And then we're going to repeat what we just did all the way around. So we're going to do 7 single crochets, 1, so there's the 7. And then we're going to do a decrease or stitching 2 single crochets together. So we'll go in the next single crochet, pull up a loop, go in the next single crochet, and pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3. And we're going to repeat this all the way around for this round until we get back to the stitch marker. So we'll continue this all the way around. 7 single crochets, and then 1 stitching 2 single crochets together, or single crochet decrease. It's called the same thing. All the way around till we get back to our stitch marker. So we repeated the 7 and the 2 together all the way around, and you'll notice at the end you have 2 single crochets that need to be stitched to finish the row. So we're just going to stitch those 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. And now we're ready for row 8. And row 8 is similar to the previous row, where we're going to stitch 5, but then instead of stitching 2 together, we're going to stitch two that are a decrease row, or stitching 2 single crochets together. In other words, before when we stitched 5, we stitched 2 single crochets in the next stitch. But instead of doing that, we're decreasing by stitching 2 single crochets into 1. So let me take my stitch marker out, stitch my first single crochet, and then put my stitch marker back. There we go. So we're going to stitch only 5 this row instead of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to do 2 single crochets together or the single crochet decrease. Go in, pull up a loop, go in the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3. And we'll do this all the way around, 5 single crochets, and then 2 single crochets together or a single crochet decrease. So we'll do 5, whoops, gonna make sure I get both loops. There we go. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the single crochet decrease. And we'll repeat this all the way around, and you're going to see it scooping under. It's doing what it's naturally supposed to do. So 5 single crochets and then single crochet decrease all the way around for row 8. You can see it's really starting to curl in now, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Now for the last stitch on row 8, you're going to have 1 single crochet. You're going to need to single crochet before we start row 9. Now row 9, we're going to be doing 1 single crochet and then a single crochet decrease. 1 single crochet, then a single crochet decrease. And we're going to do that all the way around. That's going to pull that in the center here so that it lays flat. All right, so let's go ahead and take out our stitch marker, place our first single crochet, put that stitch marker back in, pull out some yarn, and then we're going to stitch that decrease. So we're going to go in and in, yarn over, and go through both sets, then single crochet in the next stitch, then single crochet decrease. So it's 1 single crochet and then a single crochet decrease in the next. And you're going to see that it's going to pull it in nice and tight. And it is a good idea at this point to try to do this row a little bit tighter because you really want it to pull in. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch and then a single crochet decrease with the next 2 stitches. So it's 1 and 1, but it's 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet decrease all the way around, and make sure you're pulling it nice and tight so that it pulls in like it should. Nice and tight. And we'll do this all the way back around till we get to our stitch marker. This is the back of the flyer, and this is the front, and this is how it should look at this point. So now we've done all the decreasing that we're going to do, and we're just going to place a slip stitch in each stitch around. So I'm going to pull out my stitch marker, and a slip stitch, you go in, you pull up a loop, and then you pull that loop through the loop that's on your hook. And this is just going to give us a nice and tidy edge. And again, you need to pull it nice and tight. That's going to bring that flyer in the middle. And you'll see that little braid forming there. So we're just going through the stitch, pulling a loop through, and then pull that loop through the loop that's on your hook. And we're pulling just a little tighter, just because it's going to help the inside of that flyer lay just a little bit flatter for us. I forgot to put my stitch marker back in, but I think I can pretty much figure out where my last stitch is, since we switched to slip stitches from single crochets. And I'm pulling nice and tight. Because I want to bring that in. I would say when stitching this particular type of project where you're pulling really tight, it's not a good idea to use the plastic crochet hooks, because you actually might bust one pulling it nice and tight like we are. Alright, so I'm back at my slip stitch. I'm going to pull that through like that. Go ahead and cut that off. Pull up my loop just a little. I'm going to go in the next stitch here. And I'm going to pull those loops to the inside and then tie off. And then I can weave that end in. I'm just going to stick it in there for now. And then you have to smash it down just a little. And that's how you make our fun Frisbee flyers. Now, this on the pattern, there are two sizes listed. This is the 6-inch size, and this is the 5-inch size. Some people like them just a little bit smaller for a little bit smaller dogs. And so this one, you can see it's just a little bit smaller because it's 2 rows less is all. My dogs like both sizes, so it really doesn't matter. So I did the big size, but the pattern on my blog will show you how to do the small size if you want to make it just a little bit smaller. But this is our Frisbee flyer. Go make you some and have a bunch of fun.